Hey everyone, it's Nathan with Zipline Gear. Today I'm going to run over the calculations that we do to determine the anchor heights at either end of a zipline. What I've got here is a rough sketch of a zipline pathway. A typical profile is going to start at your upper tree or pole, run down into kind of this low point, come back up at the end to the ending anchor heights. And we're going to go over the calculations to find exactly where these points are actually at. A couple of terms we're going to use. The first is sag. That's referring to this height difference here. The second is the slope of the cable, and that's referring to the height difference between the two anchors. Sometimes we also call this the drop when we're referring to the actual elevation change between one or the other. The other thing that we talk about is this zone. It's usually about 3/4 of the way down the zip line, and it can actually be an entire range here, but that's where the cable is at its lowest, so we'll call that the low point. And that's really where we start. We kind of figure out what our clearance is, and then we add our sag to get the lower anchor, and then our slope to get the top anchoring height. We usually shoot for about 7 feet right here. That's close enough to reach easily, but it's not going to be a hazard. And it's again, this is weighted, so this is high enough so that adults and kids can ride the zip line and they're not scraping on the ground. So for planning, we start with a number of 7 feet. We add our sag, and we get our ending anchor height. This sag is 2% of the total length of the zip line. So if this is a 100-foot zip line, that's just a simple 2 feet. So you'd start with 7, add 2. Your ending anchor is at 9 feet relative, again, to this zone right here. The slope, or the drop, is 3%. I'll put in parentheses up to 6%. This is kind of on the low end. This is definitely on the high end, where you need some type of active or passive braking system, because you'll definitely have speed at the end of the ride. 3% is where most riders will be slowing down and stopping before they actually reach the end of the ride there. And again, you just add that to your height here, and that gives you your upper anchor height. So if we call this point A here, and point B, for you math types again, B equals 7 plus 0.02 L. So that's your anchor height. L again is your length. A is just B plus 0.03 L, or you can just start from the bottom and work all the way up, add your total percentage. A couple things to note here. This example has assumed kind of flat terrain. These are relative heights to this low point, so 9 feet and 12 feet are relative to here. You may have terrain, and this is often the case with longer zip lines. It may start here, it may come back up, it might drop down again. These differences need to be determined and subtracted from that figure to actually get a height off the ground to that point. We have a fantastic video about using a site level to create a reference point and then do your calculations. but I'll leave that to the other video. The second thing to note, this measurement from the low point of the cable to the anchor point can be a little bit difficult to measure in the field. So one thing you can use as an approximation is that the cable without weight on it will hang at about the same height as the ending anchor point. So you can put a tape measure here up to the cable without load, measure it again with a load, and that little height difference is a good approximation of this sag. So again, you kind of use that figure for your planning, and then you'll come back and test your zip line with a weight to make sure that when you load it, the height difference between loaded and unloaded is at minimum a 2% of your total zip line length. And that does it.